Hi people, Moin away from back here again as always, and as usual. Yeah, in this video I will briefly be discussing Dagan, or just Dagan, or as I will call him henceforth, Dagan. I prefer to say Dagan. I think that's how he was pronounced originally. Dagan is in English more, but I think the original pronunciation is Dagan. It's a pagan god. He is a pagan god. D-A-G-A-N or D-A-G-O-N. Before I continue, any of the things that I'll be discussing in this video, anything of use obviously and or useful, you can find it linked in the description of this video. Now let's proceed. Now the wiki section, Dagan or Dagan was a god worshipped in ancient Syria across the middle of the Euphrates, with primary temples located in Tutul and Terka. Though many attestations of his cult come from cities such as Mari, bluntly put, and Emar as well. In settlements situated in the upper Euphrates area, he was regarded as the father of gods, similar to Mesopotamian Enlil or Hurrian Kumarbi, as well as a lord of the land, a god of prosperity, and a source of royal legitimacy. Now, I'm not going to continue. That is like, what, one paragraph essentially, or half a paragraph of the Wikipedia entry. Again, you can find that alongside anything else linked in the description of this video. Now, based on the things I have read upon Dagan, I have read upon in the same sources that I'm citing here, I remember, so I'll start off by saying that I remember, I think the first time I heard of Dagan or Dagan was a movie. I think some B-rated horror movie in which he was essentially the monster, like a creature feature movie, and he was portrayed as some kind of fish monster creature. And that's also one of the things that Dagan or Dagan is arguably misinformationally associated with. I'm saying arguably because based on my observation and what I've read so far and the own conclusions I could draw, drawing my own conclusions, it's like 50-50, okay? I'll get to it in a second. You'll see what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about regarding the part of misinformation, or the part that represents misinformation, is that he is, if you just look up Dagan or Dagan God on YouTube, you'll find a bunch of misinformational videos saying that he was doing the same thing, portraying him as some kind of fish deity, or a deity that looks like a merman, half fish, and mentions of him in the Bible and whatnot, which is correct. There are mentions of him in the Bible. I mean, I have a Bible on me literally, but you know, I didn't literally read from it. I looked it up online, and yeah, there are several mentions of him in the Bible. Again, I'm not entirely sure if that is true, but there is no reason it shouldn't be, so I'm taking it at face value. So anything I mention about him in the Bible is provided that that is indeed the case, that he is indeed mentioned in the Bible, but it's highly unlikely that he isn't. Now, all the things you heard me say in the Wikipedia entry are true. I'll get to the occult information in a second. Now, let me start off first with the whole fish god thing. I already said that he's represented like that, especially in pop media, or sources that don't really know anything about him. They only know things about him at a superficial level. Not that I'm claiming to be an expert, but even less so than me, honestly. So no wonder that B-rated horror movie was also created. Of course, I'm not going to share the movie with you guys. No, are you kidding me? That movie is kind of an insult to him, but even bad publicity is still publicity at the end of the day, as multiple spirits have said. Now, Dagan or Dagan is more or less neutral towards it all. And yeah, let me see. What else was I going to say? Yeah, the part where it is true, in part, the 50% that makes it true, is because he was associated with, let's just say, a bountiful fishing session, if you will. So if fishermen went out to fish, to them it equaled fertility essentially. Like catching a lot of fish is like bringing home one hell of a bounty, and it's been a great day. You know, enough fish to eat, bountiful harvest and all of that. It's essentially a minor or lesser aspect of fertility, and that's where it comes into play. There is a section in the Wikipedia entry that states, let me just briefly look it up. Yeah, Fish god interpretation. The fish etymology, while late and incorrect, was accepted in the 19th and the early 20th century scholarship. It led to an erroneous association between Dagan and Odakan, a half-fish being mentioned by Berosus. Berosus is a Hellenistic era Babylonian writer, and with fishman motifs in Mesopotamian art, in reality depictions of Kululu, an apotropaic creature associated with the god Ea. The association with Dag meaning fish, was made by 11th century Jewish Bible commentator Rashi. In the 13th century, David Kimi interpreted the odd sentence in Samuel 5, paragraphs 2 to 7, that only Dagan or Dagon was left to him, to mean only the form of a fish was left, adding, it is said that Dagan or Dagon, from his navel down, had the form of a fish, whence his name Dagon, and from his navel up the form of a man, as it is said, his 2 hands were cut off. The Septuagint text, it's a Greek Old Testament text, or the translation of the 70, also abbreviated LXX, of of 1 Samuel 5, paragraph 2 to 7, says that both the hands and the head of the image of Dagan or Dagon were broken off. The first to cast doubt on the fish etymology was Hartmut Schmockel. I hope I'm saying his name correctly, most likely German or Austrian. A researcher, in his 1928 study of Dagan or Dagon, though he initially nonetheless suggested that while Dagan or Dagon was not in origin a fish god, the association with Dag, fish, among the maritime Canaanites and or Phoenicians would have affected the god's iconography. However, later he correctly identified it as a medieval invention. Modern researchers not only do accept it, but even question if Dagan or Dagon was worshipped in coastal areas in any significant capacity at all. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Okay, that's the part that is both correct and incorrect. So it most likely stems from the whole fertility aspect. Bottom line is, you need to put food on the table. You're living in those times, classical, antiquarial times, ancient times, BC times, or AD, short AD times, you name it. Okay, you're living in biblical times. To you, food is food, essentially. Bottom line is, you need bread, you need fish, you need crops, vegetables, you name it. You need food. End of story. So I can see where the connection comes into play, but I also agree that no, bluntly put, Dagan is not a fish god. Okay, but again, he's anything but the only pagan god with whom he's anything but the only spirit, as a matter of fact, that has metaphorically suffered this level of conjunction, if you will. I want to say arguably unjust conjunction. And just, again, things get lost in translation throughout time, and before you know it, like 2 gods are merged into one, or one god is mistaken for one, etc., etc. It's like I live on Penny Lane and someone else lives on Benny Lane, and then over the course of both our streets or addresses' existence, you can see how any post office might screw that up. All it takes is to turn the P into a B, and for that to happen, in order for that to happen, all it takes in turn is for someone to have crummy handwriting, or someone to have sloppy handwriting, and there you go. You know, my mail, important mail even, goes from, instead of my address to being delivered to Benny Lane, to person B that I have no association with or have ever heard of, etc. Even if we have an association, then it's either a metaphorical coincidence or otherwise, if we have stuff in common. So the same thing happens within this context, and has happened has happened throughout time within this context, and arguably still happens up to present day, in the sense that people, you know, mistakenly misidentify things, to put it that way. An example that I can think of is something I've already discussed in the past, or I've not discussed in abundance, but brought up, where, and other occultists have also pointed it out, the Archangel Samael ruling over Mars, the Sephira of Mars, aka Madim and or Geburak, in certain texts that were translated, his name was also confused, the S in his name was also confused with the K, I think from Liber to Samek, and this in Hebrew, from Hebrew to like English or another language, or Latin or whatever. and therefore the name turned from Samael to Kamael. We're talking about the same entity here, but you see what I mean? It's essentially like, almost bluntly put, making an entity schizophrenic, only in a matter of speaking, in the sense that it has, you're giving an entity multiple identities. They're all one and the same, but you're essentially calling it by another name and handing it other attributes and whatnot. In my work with that same Samael, my beloved primordial Lord Samael, as a beginner, after like what, a really short while, he already told me that, hey, we're both one and the same, you know, because I stumbled across it. He made me stumble across it, and he showed me literally where, like, the entity I saw appear as Kamael and him like Samael. He was like, we're both one and the same, and they literally merged into one, like boom, right in front of my eyes. And he was like, I'm one, I am him, he is me, we're both one and the same. And I was like, yeah, no wonder, it does make sense. But you can see, you know, that's why you get, and the same thing happened, is prompt to happen with any other entity, including pagan gods. So yeah, that's just to explain that whole bit. Now, for the rest, as I already said in the first paragraph, the things that Dagan was worshipped for were royal anointment, essentially the bestowing kingsmanship onto those that take the throne in any civilization or in any kingdom or empire, you name it. And another thing is that he was also worshipped for fertility. There are also associations with him being a weather god. Yeah, unfortunately this video is not going to be short. I can't shorten this video. I need to go over everything thoroughly. Hold on, let me see from the Wikipedia section. Dagan and weather gods. Due to the similarity between the names of Dagan's wife Shalash and Shala, wife of Adat in Mesopotamia, some researchers conclude that the two goddesses were the same and that Dagan was possibly a weather god himself. However, there is no clear proof that Dagan fulfilled such a function or that he was conflated with any weather gods. So yeah, short and straight to the point. Yeah, and those were the things that Dagan was worshipped for. Pretty much everything, honestly. The things that you needed to get by in daily life, especially if you lived in those times. Just overall prosperity, royal legitimacy related affairs, such as, again, anointment of kingsmanship, or essentially the same way that you saw people get knighted, as in, I hereby knight the king of empire, blah blah blah. In that context, he was essentially the god that knights you, as in, hey, you need approval from you need approval from Dagan in order to Dagan or Dagan in order to officially be seen as the legitimate king. So I'm pretty much sure that if, for example, whatever form of divination they used and it didn't look too good, then immediately they would say, hey, he's not a true successor, he's not a legitimate king. No, illegitimate king, you're rejected hereby, you need approval from Dagan. And Dagan says no, according to our according to our readings and our oracles and whatnot. Regardless of whether that form of divination was actually, that reading and or divination technique was actually valid or not. Yeah, and for the rest, weather, etc., like was already said, although there is no clear-cut proof, and he was seen as father of the gods, etc., etc., etc. Similar to the Greeks and Zeus, and the Romans and Jupiter, and it just goes on, you know. Similar to Ea that I covered, or Thingy Enki, better said. You name it. All, if not most civilizations had a main god, the one that they saw as the big guy, which obviously is not the case in actuality, for there is only one true God, only Father Almighty, period, obviously. Now, another article that you'll find linked in the description of this video is a link from a website called biblestudytoolscom, and by a contributing writer called Britt Mooney, and it was updated February the 3rd, so like 2 weeks ago essentially, or 2 weeks and a couple of days ago, to be exact, 16 days ago from the date of me recording this video on February the 19th. Who was Dagan or Dagan in the Bible, and what happened to this idol? And he has a bunch of interesting stories, and based on what I've seen, what I've read, it is legitimate. Okay, there is no misinformation or anything like that, not to my knowledge, observation, and experience. Now, I can finally get to, this is all to give you enough in the way of a backstory on Dagan or Dagan. Now, I can finally get to the occult part. I'm going to start off with his appearance first. When I summoned Dagan, I found his appearance quite interesting. I was like, wow, okay, did not see that coming. He appeared as a typical Middle Eastern or Persian looking man. The way that they're depicted the way that most of their gods are depicted. So Babylonian, Phoenician, Assyrian, Syrian, it just goes on like that. So a typical Moorish looking man, like Arabic looking with like curly hair, etc. The typical Persian look. And he was wearing, get this, he was wearing an outfit that looks very similar to the Pope. There wasn't a cross on him or anything like that. Okay, there were only two horizontal lines, like similar to a cross, but no cross. But I'm simply saying that he had like the hat, the Pope hat, and the thingy, and everything, everything. And it was black initially, and the cross on his chest was like a cross going over the front part of his robe, from like head to toe, pretty much, was like golden, yellow gold, and then it switches to white, and the yellow gold stays the same. Yeah, it stays the same. And a sky beam shot up into the air, and his eyes like become like completely glazed over, like no thingy, no pupils or black section, etc. No eye color. It's just completely blank and completely white, and it radiates the same light, like bright yellow light from the thingy that sky beam has. It's quite a cool appearance, I'm not gonna lie. And then I saw fertile farmlands in the background, and I heard the same kind of noises you hear when the same kind of noises you would hear, generally speaking, amongst farmlands, with farm animals in the background, the whole husbandry bit, the whole Farmer John bit with fertile crops and whatnot. Reminding me of a video game I used to play as a kid called Age of Mythology. The second you farm land, you hear like, I think a sheep or a thingy, a goat, a mixture of those noises. It's simply the noise that one were to associate with fertility, like typical things that remind you of a farmer that is capable of producing prosperous farmlands or bringing about such. And I saw I saw as well that above his head was the sky, just miscellaneous sky with clouds, and on the ground beneath his feet turned into water, but at the same time it was transparent to the point where it was like the sky was also mirrored in the reflection of the water, with plenty of like fish jumping around out of the water. And yeah, that's pretty much what Dagan looks like. And he's also not a talker. Like, he barely spoke any like couple of words to me. It's like more of someone that answers with yes and no, like one word replies. Not out of like hostility or any kind of negative, not coming from any bad place. It's just that he's like the strong silent type, let's just put it that way. Very not mechanical, just plain very Saturnian in nature, let me just put it that way. Despite the fact that he's not Saturnian, mind you. By Saturnian, I simply mean like, you know, strong silent type. It's like me. Hey Moreno, how are you? Fine. How was work today? Good. That's pretty much what Dagan is like. Dagan and or Dagan is like. So yeah, you can see that everything does fit together with the information, the factual information that is out there on him. Factual in the sense of you being as sure can be. So yeah, it only further supports that those things were indeed true based on his appearance alone. Now, the next thing is what Dagan corresponds to. Guess what? Dagan is lunar. You heard that correctly. Dagan is a lunar spirit. He corresponds to 11 degrees in Cancer. That 11 degrees stands for oratory. So again, you see where all of it comes from. So again, that only further puts the nail in the coffin in terms of things that he was worshipped for. So those things alone that I mentioned in the first paragraph are completely correct. Those are exactly the things that he was worshipped for. Okay, the fact that he's lunar, the moon, deals with those things by default. We're talking about the moon deals with the weather up to a certain extent. It deals obviously with water. It rules over water as an element from a planetary perspective at the very least. The moon also deals with fertility. It deals with farming, etc., etc. Most spirits that specialize in farming and fertility related affairs, not most, but a considerable amount that I've come across, are lunar in nature, or have strong lunar affinities at the very least. And yeah, the Greece specifically also stands for anointment of kingsmanship. Okay, essentially royal anointment or royal appointment, what have you. And that also explains his appearance, because I understood that without him having to say anything while I was busy preparing myself to record this video, it just hit me. I was like, yeah, you don't need to tell me anything. It just hit me. Why your thingy? Yeah, that's why you appear the way you do. Yeah, he was essentially, because the appearance he takes is essentially, or part of his appearance is essentially the religious figure that appoints kings. And that's also what the sky beam stands for, the association with the weather, and the fact that he essentially is the legitimizer, or he was when he was worshipped, the civilizations that worshipped him, or the civilization that worshipped him, or tribe, whatever, the people that worshipped him, they trusted him, like I already said, to be the one that appoints a new king or queen or any nobility. Without him, it was, if like they were under the impression that the answer was no, as in, hey, this guy won't make a good king, then it's not going to happen. It was highly unlikely to happen, because, you know, lest they want to anger Dagan, and I'm pretty sure that that's not what they wanted to do, since they, you know, didn't know that he was a pagan god and that they called him into existence. They thought that he was already in existence, like most other pagan gods, like all, if not most other pagan gods. But that, yeah, that explains the thingy appearance, the Pope-looking appearance. I also saw, like, when I literally typed in Dagan god in thingy, or Dagan god in YouTube, I also saw like videos that I'm not sure if they're true, not that it changes anything for me, but they said that that the Pope, I don't know if it's the present Pope, etc. I didn't check like the age of the video, but a Pope or just the Pope overall, regardless of which Pope it is through time. Of course, the video can't be that long ago, so it has to be like the current Pope. I don't care either way. Bottom line is, the Pope has like allegedly the symbol of Dagan on his hat. His head crest has the same symbol as Dagan. Now, as for Dagan symbols, the Wikipedia section doesn't like say anything about Dagan. I mean, I don't see like anything, honestly. There is no specific seal that you can use. I mean, you can use the Sumerian text, but it's not really necessary. One's intent is already enough. And you can also like create a rose thingy. With a Hebrew rose cross, you can create a self-made seal. All of it is not really necessary. Like I said, by default, your intent will be more than enough. Yeah, so there is no specific symbol. So I don't know what that, I didn't even know what that was about. So you can imagine if I like, when I saw his appearance, I was like, wow, okay, wow. So you really look like a Pope. I'm like, wow. Now I'm starting to think that that video might have some truth to it. But again, either way, I don't care even if it's true to the fullest extent and the Pope does indeed have Dagan symbol or Dagan symbol on his hat. It changes nothing to me. I have no opinion on the Pope or Vatican City or anything like that. I have no opinion. I literally just have no comment. I have nothing to say regarding that. But yeah, that's what it looks like. Not necessarily, it doesn't reflect any kind of religious association with the Pope. Okay, primarily it stands for, like I said, noble anointment and or appointment, noble knighting, if you will, or just knighting of nobility. Like I already explained. Let me see, and I think that's it, guys. Let me see if I have anything else on Dagan or Dagan. And no, that's pretty much it. So now you know. Bye bye.